Hi, this is Chris Billings. I am a graduate of Code Louisville's front end web development track. I My project for this was a random number generator and a point buy system for role playing games. Random number generator could generate any number of sides and add any additional numbers to the end of it. The point buy system operated based off of either starting at 8 or 10 points, and we can go ahead and take a look at that now.
Okay, let's start with the main page layouts just from the browser here. Just the front page, it doesn't really have a whole lot special. Has a jumbotron just for some general information at the very beginning, and then some more information down at the bottom, just explaining the whole web page. The second page, though, is where everything really starts. We have the point buy array, which you can actually choose whether you want your scores to start at 10 or at 8. They do scroll down at the very beginning. Whenever you click on one of these, it automatically changes the score, changes the modifier, and resets the point cost back to 0. As you can see, changing it up and down changes the modifier and the point cost. If I hit starting score 10, it does the same thing. Point cost again increases. Reset scores just resets the entire page back to its base levels. Next, we have the DiceRoller. The DiceRoller is simply a location where you can choose how many dice you want to roll. So, for example, say I need 5 6-sided dice, and I need to add, say, 2 to the end of the roll. Just hit the button next to it. Gives a roll at the bottom here. 5d6 with modifier of 2 results in a 19. This does add in the number at the very end of the code. Okay, so starting off here, we have the HTML for the DiceRoller. At the very beginning, of course, we have the doc type declarations along with the meta tags. I also went ahead and used a normalized.css file just to keep everything normalized in case the other items do not load. I also went ahead and used Bootstrap for most of the formatting. And then I also have a custom CSS file that just sets the background and a few other things, and it's about the same for all the pages. So at first here we have the navigation bar, has the buttons for the main page, for the point buy, and for the DiceRoller. As you can see, it sets to active depending on which one. Next we have the container for the table. In the table, each row has an input followed by the letter D, then the number of dice, and then another input for the addition or subtraction on the base number, and then the button to roll. Each one is corresponding, of course, to the individual rolls. And then down at the bottom, I have a read-only text history that simply is there to append the roll history to the end of it. And then at the very bottom is the JavaScript for the DiceRoller. Moving on to the DiceRoller script itself, we have the function for the roller itself. It takes in 3 different variables: the number of rolls we'll need, the size of the roll, and then the modifier, which is the add or subtract. As you can see, each individual button, roll 4, roll 6, roll 8, so on. It runs the click function. It runs a function on a click, and it actually runs roller, where the value of the number 4 entry is parsed into a value for the number. Then the sides is always going to be 4, 6, or 8, or however many sides you need. And then the modifier is again just the same thing, only it parses the integer for the add4 value. All of those go in. I set up just a standard loop. So while the number is greater than 0, it will continue to roll the it'll continue to roll the sides, and then subtract 1 from the variable I, and stores the numbers into the variable random number. And then at the end, of course, we have the random number we add in the modifier to the random number to get the total amount. And then it goes into the text box. It prepends so that it will always show up at the very top. The newest rolls first. Prepend, it'll roll, and then it'll say the number plus D sides. So in this case, rolling, say, 5D6 with a modifier, mod, results in, and then it gives a random number and then creates a line break below it so that everything can be separated. Very standard stuff. Next is the point by. Again, we have the standard information at the top. This one, just so that I could experiment a bit, I actually had my JavaScript put in at the very top. You'll see that in the JavaScript file that I had to make a few adjustments because of that. Again, we have the nav bar. In this case, we have 2 buttons. Starting score 8, starting score 10. Those are what picks up whenever somebody clicks on one of those buttons. That's how it populates everything. Then we have a second table, or we have a table here. The first one just simply outlines each of the rows, ability, score, modifier, point cost. And then each individual row has its own ability name, along with its own spinner for the value, the modifier within a span, and then the points to modify within the span. And then down at the bottom, we have a button for reset, and then an item that gives the total. Now, for the JavaScript on this one is a little bit more complicated. This one, I actually had to create 2 different variables. One which calculated the abilities if you chose to start off at 10, and another one if you chose to start off at 8. And that is because starting off at 8, the point cost for 8 is 0, while the modifier is -1. Whereas with 10, the starting point is 10, the modifier is 0, and the point cost is 0. And so that changes things a bit. Down at the bottom here, we have the document.ready items. Once everything is ready, it actually runs this function. So first off, hides the scores table. Whenever one of the radios is clicked, radio 1 or radio 2, it sets the variable base8 to true or false, and then populates the scores for the stats. As you can see here, variable base8, it's just simply there as a basic true-false. Okay. Next, we have the populate function itself. This one is an if-else statement. So if base8 is equal to true, it sets the minimum attribute that somebody can select as 5, the maximum as 16, and then the value is 8. Otherwise, it sets the minimum as 8, the max is 18, and the value is 10. As you can tell, they are all exactly 2 apart, same as the values, and that is intentional. That is actually how the point-by system is supposed to operate. And then it runs the function stats for each individual stat. Okay. So on this one, it runs stat. You have to have a prefix, so strength, dex, con, int, whiz, CHA for charisma. It again calls back to the base8 variable. This time, if it's false, it will actually run the base 10. and it'll actually pull the value of the ability, runs the modifier, and puts in the text for what was returned here. And then else, again, does the same thing, only for the calculate abilities base 8 variable instead. And then it runs a total, where it actually parses the integers of all the text together, and then puts in the total. Down at the bottom here, we do have whenever a spinner is changed, it actually runs the stats calculation for that function, or for that ability, and then the reset just reruns the populate variable again, or populate function again. Aside from that, I do have a bit in the DiceRoller. I have a couple of media queries because the tables do get a little bit too large for the tinier resolutions. I just went ahead and set it to a max width of 720 pixels. It just sets the table with a max width of 100 pixels with padding on the left and the right of 10 pixels, and then all the inputs have a max width of 100 pixels as well. All 3 of the pages also have the background color as light gray for the body. And as you can see on the DiceRoller, if I were to modify this and go down to about 700, you can see it does change. The point by array, unfortunately, cannot change as well. That is mostly because the spinner has to stay at a specific size. Otherwise, it could get it could cause a problem. It does get down to a fairly reasonably small size. It just gets down, once you get into the very small mobile sizes, it does tend to break down a bit. I do intend to work on that a little bit further, though.
And thanks for viewing. This is Chris Billings with the front-end web development track again. I actually have a few improvements that I would like to make on the point buy system and the random number generator that you had just seen. Namely, I would like to separate out each individual roll of the dice so that they can be seen, and make the point buy system a little bit more modular as far as allowing it to be seen on mobile devices a little bit easier. Professionally, though, I am looking for a new position at this point. Hopefully that I can use this newfound knowledge to get a position as a front-end web developer. But again, thank you for watching.